Dr. Sharma's keynote will explore how we, as researchers, can engage with AI not only effectively but also ethically, safeguarding the values of transparency, rigor, and integrity that must guide our scholarly work. Please join me in welcoming Dr. Sharma to the stage.
Good morning. Good morning, everybody, and thank you very much, Professor Al-Kirat. I am truly grateful for the gracious introduction and for the wonderful hospitality and very pleasant time in the last 14 days in Morocco. I had, as I was telling my colleague, Professor Al-Ghazali, I didn't have any kind of expectation of Morocco. I just wanted to come here as if with a blank slate, like a child, wondering and curious to learn. But I was still surprised by how pleasant, hospitable, friendly people, the environment and everything is. I just want to say that I would love to come back and stay connected with my colleagues in Morocco for a long time. I have been to many countries doing similar kinds of programs, training faculty, students, but this has been, I'm not exaggerating, this has been the most pleasant country and community to be in. Thank you, Vice President, Professor Kassou, Vice Dean, Professor Boussacourt, sorry if I mispronounced it. Mohammed. Oh, your last name is Mohammed. Yeah, Mohammed Boussacourt. Last name, Professor Boussacourt, and Professor Badr for the wonderful openings of the discourse today. You have made it easy for me to build on what you have said. It is as if you laid the foundation, I can build the house. So the title of this presentation goes right at the heart of the theme of this entire 3-day convention. It has to do with how scholars and researchers, as writers, as knowledge makers, as responsible members of the society, can maintain intellectual and social agency so that they are in the driver's seat, not ChatGPT. So that when they finish their degrees, it's not like one of those students in TikTok who says, thank you everybody, but especially ChatGPT for writing all of my papers and reports. And I go, that guy's smart enough to not realize it's not a joke. He thought it was. And so as long as we are in the driver's seat, I think we will figure out a way. But I believe that in the last 4 years, 22, 23, 24, 25, still not 4 complete years since the entry of artificial intelligence into the mainstream public. Of course, it was being developed since the 1950s. Some of the philosophies and theories of artificial intelligence were developed in the 1950s, 70s, 90s. It stalled. And this viralization of AI with ChatGPT and other tools now is only a moment where everybody's being exposed, but artificial intelligence is not new. I've actually read a few books on the development of artificial intelligence from the perspective of linguistics, from the perspective of computer science, from the philosophy and knowledge making. And the people that are actually knowledgeable are less impressed than the people that are running after it. And there must be something about it that the rest of us in the middle need to figure out. Why is it? We need to understand the virality, and we need to understand the dynamics, the psychology behind it. Okay, so how many of you know about the Greek philosopher Plato and his allegory of the cave? Can I see a raise of hands? Oh, quite a few. Interesting. So I want to begin with this analogy for what I'm afraid is starting to happen across the world in the landscape of research and scholarship. As increasingly powerful and increasingly agency asserting, machines offer support and substitution for scholars across the disciplines to do research, reading, writing, data analysis, and whatnot. This video that I'm about to show visualizes a famous story by the Greek philosopher Plato for explaining the need for scholars to seek higher truth than everyday understanding in the nature and society that we have as ordinary people. Plato was trying to explain what happens when you do not try to seek higher truth, higher reality, but rather go by the appearance of what things look like about society, nature. I should be able to pull this up. Let's see. There's no connection, but don't worry. In the next, okay, there is a cave. We'll see in the next video. And then there's shadows on the front. But this is the cave. The real world of reality is way out there. And only because of the fire and the people passing across the passage, these prisoners, us, see the shadows, distorted pictures on the wall and think that is the reality. If you think about it, that's the computer screen. That image projected on the screen is ChatGPT's response, but a very small fragment of reality is reflected. And hopefully by the end of this session, I will be able to show you how we need to get out of that cave. Go into the world of real knowledge, research, data, social responsibility, ethics, and do our work. 1 second, I should...
Flickers dimly.
1 second. It is...
For hero's journey. In Plato's profound allegory...
Okay, so that the segment here begins explaining the allegory as an analogy of why we need to get out of our common perception into the world of reality. And I think that's the best metaphor for actual research rather than shadow research.
He uses the metaphor of a subterranean cave to illustrate a group of prisoners sequestered from birth. Their world is one of complete isolation, devoid of any contact with the external universe. Bound by chains and restricted in their movements, they are compelled to face the barren cave wall, deprived of the ability to swivel their heads or see beyond their immediate environment. An enigmatic fire positioned behind them flickers dimly, barely illuminating their dreary surroundings. Periodically, individuals walk behind the prisoners, parading various figures. These are representations of animals, plants, and an array of other artifacts. These objects, when passing by the fire, cast elongated and distorted shadows on the stone wall before the prisoners. Having no other experiences, the prisoners mistake these dancing illusions for reality, categorizing them and assigning them names, erroneously believing that they are discerning, tangible entities. You can see where Plato is going with this. Unexpectedly, one prisoner's shackles are removed, and he is thrust into the world beyond the cave for the very first time. The moment is ripe for him to be tested. The intense brilliance of the sunlight initially hurts his eyes, and the unfamiliar environment bewilders him. When confronted with the fact that his former perception of reality was merely a distorted illusion, and that the things he now sees around him are the real objects, he starts to suffer, his previous reality being deconstructed before his very eyes. The mind that opens to a new idea never returns to its original size. The shadows he was familiar with appeared much more vivid to him. However, as time progresses, his eyes slowly adapt to the overwhelming brightness, and his suffering slowly passes as he gets accustomed to his new perspective. Gradually, he starts perceiving reflections in shimmering water bodies, progresses to observing objects directly, and finally, he dares to gaze at the radiant sun, the ultimate source of light that illuminates everything he has been observing. Emboldened by his newfound understanding, the prisoner makes his way back to the cave, intending to share his revelations with the other prisoners. However, having grown accustomed to the light, he now finds the cave's darkness disorienting and struggles to discern the once familiar shadows on the wall. The other prisoners, misconstruing his disorientation, surmise that his journey into the outer world has left him imbecilic and blinded, thereby rebuffing his attempts to liberate them vehemently. Plato presents this passage as an intricate metaphor, symbolizing the predicament of a philosopher tasked with enlightening the masses. He asserts that most people not only find solace in their ignorance, but also exhibit hostility towards those who challenge their preconceived notions. There are many ways in which one can interpret Plato's allegory of the cave, each perspective having its own profound teachings. After all, this is what an allegory is all about. reflecting on real-world events, Socrates, Plato's mentor.
I'm going to pause right there and just reinforce the analogy. Don't try to tell somebody who is completely believing in ChatGPT's knowledge that it is all mismatched, probable patterns of words. They may think you're crazy. Don't tell anybody on Facebook that's not how to live life. They're so deep into this hole that I have struggled to tell my aunts and uncles that this is not how to live a social network. But things have become normalized. And just because they have become normalized doesn't mean that people with PhDs, doctors, engineers, scholars, think the same way as my crazy aunt does. Down in the hole of Facebook, down in the hole of ChatGPT, posting messages and saying, wow, this is better writing than I can do. Guess what? If ChatGPT is writing better science than you do, who is the scientist? Maybe like the African student in the TikTok video, you should be giving a degree to ChatGPT. Dr. ChatGPT. So Plato's told the story to describe how human beings can mistake illusions for reality. The illusion of artificial intelligence is that it seeks to represent a reality through probable patterns. Even when you ask it to find accurate information with a source, it gives you broken necks. It gives you synthetic text. It gives you arguments that are processed by powerful machines that sound convincing, because it can convince you that a triangle has 4 sides. Ask it to make an argument of any kind, crazy, absurd, ludicrous, and it will do it. It is simply a word mixer, a word salad maker. If we mistake AI's fluency for genuine knowledge, if we build scholarship on mimicry rather than mastering, if we risk becoming prisoners of our own convenience and speed. Convenience and speed is not PhD. It is slow, simmering cooking of knowledge that takes a lot of time and effort. It is not smart thinking, it is hard thinking. I'm not a computer scientist, but as a writing scholar who teaches research methods and runs faculty development programs across the world, as well as student support programs on my campus, runs a graduate program in writing and rhetoric and communication, I have been actively exploring what these tools mean for research and scholarship. I use them, I test them, and I break them. Professor Al-Turat knows how I love to break them, like the vice president seemed to do himself with the triangles and rectangles. Using them for hundreds of kinds of purposes. So don't think I am speaking here to oppose or criticize or reject artificial intelligence. I'm deep in that cave, as well as coming out and thinking hard. And I've also been reading a few books, maybe a dozen books on the history and the philosophy and the psychology and the dynamics of artificial intelligence. And these the facts may change. These facts may change because it is very quickly evolving. What is not true today becomes true tomorrow. What is true today becomes untrue tomorrow. But here are a few fundamentals. Number one, AI tools based on large language models are built to generate plausible, statistically probable content. Even when you ask them to only present accurate information, grounded in reliable sources, they keep running back into the generating territory. I learned that it is because there is money in generating and there's no money in accurately locating. So if you don't understand the politics and economics of AI, we will not understand the technology of AI. So if you're a computer scientist, don't tell me you know AI until you know the politics and economics also. Second, some tools are now designed to locate information as well as to do specific other analytical tasks with provided information, but even they still mix up generated information, including by making up sources as well as giving you broken links. And third, even the research assistant tools usually do not have access to academic databases. Forget about non-digitized books, government and industry data sources, and much more. They're designed to act like they know everything. They act like they seem to know everything because they're designed to act like they know everything. I'll get to that in a moment. These limits raise some key questions for me. as well as some key intellectual positions. Here are my intellectual positions. As a learner, my question is, metaphorically, can I send my neighbor to the gym for me? The answer is no. Learning cannot be outsourced. It may be fun to complete and submit an assignment, but if I didn't learn, what am I preparing for? I may get the credit. What about my credibility? As a teacher, my question is this: how do I avoid misusing AI and misusing my authority and trust and responsibility while using AI? I shouldn't do that. I have too much power, and with power comes responsibility. As a researcher, and this is the focus of today's and the next 2 days' programs, my question is, how often can I do research in the cave and call it research? Even when I'm doing library research, even after AI becomes reliable and accurate, I do not believe that I need to stay in the cave. I need to get out of the world and find real data, interview people, observe phenomena, go in the lab, go in the city, go in the town, and finally wake up that this churning of existing knowledge, synthesizing existing knowledge is not enough. That is only chapter 2, the literature review. What is your data in chapter 3? What is your finding and analysis in chapter 4? What is your discussion and contribution of new knowledge in chapter 5? And I urge students across the disciplines, in science, in education, in social sciences, to think about that. Especially by introducing the shadow maker, we may have diluted or polluted our library research as well. And so I worry that convenience and speed and the impression of polished language might actually dilute my own thinking, my own contribution. I am very excited about AI, but I must balance my excitement with my caution, my responsibility. Of course, ethics is famously hard to define. If we are using religion or faith as the basis of ethics, which religion and whose interpretations, even if you pick one religion? If it is secular ethics, how do we agree on shared values? We live in a world of very globalized, very multicultural perspectives. We may get closer to some consensus through social ethics, but while that too is complicated by social dynamics, I think we can get a little closer to some consensus, some workable guidelines and principles, and that's what I'm trying to do today. So, thinking of more secular, more universal kinds of ethical principles, we can start picking some very general universal ideas of ethics. If you think about the first, the golden rule: treat others as you would want to be treated. Don't use AI to impact others or society at large in ways that you would not like others to use AI on you. If you don't want someone to dump AI content on you, don't dump AI content on others. If you'd like others to speak truthfully from their heart, speak truthfully from your heart. The second is a very interesting rule in my field of communication and rhetoric called the Terrace test, shared by Sherry Baker and David Martinson in the Journal of Mass Media Ethics, which consists of 5 principles. Truthfulness. T stands for truthfulness. A for authenticity. R for respect toward the other person. E for equity. And S for social responsibility. In any act of communication, we need to look the person in the eye. We do not look away and say whatever comes to our mind, supported by somebody behind us speaking in our ears. To use ChatGPT is to do this and listen to the other person talking and say without looking in the eye. Looking in the eye is an established universal principle for millennia. That's how we evolved, talking to each other. We don't look away and say whatever somebody's telling us. In public service, which includes scholarship, ethics generally translates into qualities and commitments like Professor Badr was saying earlier: transparency, competence, and accountability. If you're not competent, you're not a scholar. If you're not transparent and somebody cannot replicate your research or follow the same methods or use the same theories in a reliable manner, maybe that's not good research. And finally, to further focus on the why of ethics in research, Scholars must seek and contribute truth, create real value, and minimize harm. We must use rigorous methods, stay informed, be honest with society, and to do the first two things, we must learn, continue to learn, and we must earn public trust through continued learning and responsible scholarship. Let us get a little deeper into the scholarly question of how to use AI responsibly as scholars. To advance social responsibility and to create social value through our research, we must have at least three things in respectable amounts when using AI. 1, adequate knowledge. 2, adequate skills. And 3, adequate or high ethical standards. To put it simply, if we can balance our knowledge, our skills, and our ethics, or ethical duty towards the society with the power of AI, then we are in a better position to be in the driver's seat. This doesn't mean that I must match the raw power, speed, or precision of AI. I cannot carry the load of an elephant. I cannot fly like an arrow. I cannot slice like a sword. But I must develop the knowledge, skill, and integrity to train the elephant, to aim the arrow, or to wield the sword. Otherwise, I risk letting increasingly forceful yet unaccountable mix of brute strength, blind speed, and stunning precision to take over my thinking, writing, and responsibility towards society. So let's unpack the knowledge dimension, 1, which is foundational to responsible and effective use of AI in research and scholarship. To use AI effectively and responsibly, we need enough knowledge. We need to be the researcher. If we want to call AI the research assistant, let us make sure we are the researcher. So when an undergraduate students tell me, oh, AI is a research assistant, I say, so you are the research professor? In order to have a research assistant, you must be a researcher, mustn't you? I cannot be a farmer and I cannot say, okay, this is my engineering assistant. Like, no, you're not an engineer. I cannot be a doctor and I cannot say, this is my philosopher assistant. Wait a second, how much philosophy do you know, doctor? So there is this simple gap. When you say, this is a research assistant, the research assistant cannot be 10 times more knowledgeable than you. Your elephant is driving you. You're running behind the car. You got cutting yourself with a sword. And so, let us not look like this dumb researcher who is asking a dumb question. Garbage in, garbage out. So here's how emerging scholars might stay in the zone of safety. Say that AI tools' ability to generate texts that meet communicative needs keep rising vertically from 0 upwards on y-axis, and say that your ability as a scholar to judge the text generated by AI moves in the direction as you advance in your PhD. First year, second year, third year, fourth year. Now, you could say, if you draw the line in the middle, let's call it the line of optimal but risky use of AI. Because you can knowledgeably judge AI content if you're staying somewhere in the middle and not going too far into the danger zone. But as my graduate assistant, a computer science student from India, who helped me to create this visual last year when he and I were creating another workshop together for graduate students, the line in the middle can also be called the line of paradox. We don't know what we don't know. It's called the learner's paradox, or the curse of knowledge. And AI tools are confident as crazy uncles. We can also call this the learner's paradox in the sense that AI tools are less useful if we already know or can do what AI tools can do already, and AI tools are more useful if we don't know, but you're always in this paradox. If you already know, it's not so useful. If you don't know, it's useful but risky. Navigating that line of paradox requires what I call the critical AI literacy. As one of the speakers who is going to speak by Zoom tomorrow, Professor Mahabali from Egypt, that's kale. The other kale is K-A-L-E. Doctoral students, you may not like kale, but eat some vegetables. You got the joke. So you have to grapple with the paradox. So if somebody wants to create a black and white argument and say, oh, you're opposing AI because AI is useful, you don't know yet, come with me. Let's go a little deeper into the knowledge. I said, without the politics and economics, please don't convince me with your computer science. We need critical AI literacy to navigate that political and economic landscape. So this is the knowledge map when somebody plugged in all of the journal articles published around the world in a global map. And I want the Vice President to see this, because as a university leader, that's where we are. There are two problems with this map. First, countries like Morocco are not in this map. And we need to catch up and be in this map. And the faculty development workshop that we're doing is to be on that map. We're going to produce a few hundred articles in the next few years so that our journal article publication will get us on that map. But second, this is a terrible map. We also need to learn to create new kinds of map. Because this map only is created by plugging journal articles produced in particular index journals, not the journal that we publish here. And obviously not the kinds of knowledge that we produce and use to run our life, society, and community here. Based on some internet research, I learned about rich forms of knowledge in Morocco, in its traditions like, and this is very simple internet research. It might take a few months for me to learn about this topic, and I'm not going to ask ChatGPT, because I haven't had a good experience of trying to learn about Morocco through ChatGPT. It has very, very, very shallow and wrong information about Morocco. But this is Google, okay? I learned that there's a tradition called halqa, public storytelling, hikayat, oral narrative, malhoun, poetic songs, and artisanal crafts and traditional ecological practices, forms transmitted through apprenticeship, oral memory, and communal performance rather than academic publication. If we were to make the map of all of those things, then Africa would be fatter than America. You got the joke again. We would be big, as we deserve to be. So, there are two problems with the map, right? This is why I hate black and white simplistic thinking that comes from technocratic parts of our academic landscape. We need to learn to look at the history of AI and the economics of AI and the politics of AI and see why we are creating this map. As if that previous map was not bad, now look at this map. I couldn't find a full map of data input. I could only find one data point, which is that the total amount of data input from the continent or about the continent of entire Africa is 1%, according to a study by New York University researchers. But even if you simply look at the data use, this is where the advancement of AI is happening. We are still not on the map. This is AI investment. And if the money, it tells us, the design tells us, if the money and the power and the decisions and the epistemic and political and geopolitical and economic interests are coming from these spots, we are not getting on the map either. So, let's take a few minutes. Most people believe that AI has access to all digitized, internet-connected information. Not true. AI knows very little beyond the dominant world. For example, the 1% data about Africa. Imagine 18% of global landmass, 20% of global population, and 54 countries on the continent of Africa. Not to mention the cradle of human civilization with thousands of languages, cultures, and epistemologies. Where is that map? The limitation is not just geographic, but also political, as we saw, and epistemic, if you think about the map of knowledge. And which knowledge? Not just article knowledge. Most people, knowledge exists in thousands of languages, but AI depends on just a few. Beyond the internet, much of the knowledge system is embodied in practice and traditions and unwritten rules, which AI cannot reach. Heck, AI does not even have access to more than 3% of journal databases like JSTOR, EBSCO, Elsevier. So when it pretends to know everything, just look at, cross-check what it is saying with an actual journal article, an actual book, and it will tell you, oh, by the way, I made it up. On the side of the patterns of thought, there is another problem. It also thinks like a particular man from a particular part of the world. Why? It thinks in lists. Do you go about medicine and art and engineering and economics thinking in lists? Is list a very normal, natural, everyday practice? We don't think in lists. I'm a scholar of rhetoric. We think in hundreds of ways. And in different cultures, patterns are different. And it does not represent patterns of knowledge or content of knowledge. So, the reliance on whatever is dominant risks erasing or distorting non-Western knowledge and undermining education's role in solving local social problems around the world. We are led to believe that AI knows everything, or it knows a lot because it is designed to perform like it. Just as the best image generating tool, DALL-E. I have access to most of the most advanced tools by paying monthly subscriptions, and I use them. Just ask one of your best AI image generating tools, can you create an image of a Moroccan worker going to work? And then tell me how much it knows and how it thinks. So, beyond that simple idea of epistemology, let's look at the politics and economics. There are direct harms of AI, such as the exploitation of labor, physical and mental, extraction and depletion of natural resources, especially in less economically dominant countries, destruction of natural habitats, and impacts on people's health due to extreme levels of use of energy and water and natural resources. All the impacts happen at a far larger scale in the global south than they do in the global north. For example, in the Nigerian countryside, a teacher may be saying, hey, ask ChatGPT, everything, it knows everything. But in the countryside, in a city, the teacher may be bragging about ChatGPT. But in the countryside, their lands are extracted, their water is redirected, their energies are not supplied to the people. And in that situation, we cannot say in the luxury of cities, universities, comfort, as privileged scholars, that it is okay. Every time you generate a text, about a bottle of water is burned in the process of cooling the machines. So, there are global knowledge politics and social impacts on people and planet, and the excited computer scientists may be distracting us from. They are serious scholarly issues insofar as seeking the truth that is contextually useful, knowledge that will make us respectable. Let's move on a little faster. I'm going to start wrapping up. Let us apply the understanding about research and AI to the context of research and knowledge making. How does a doctoral student determine that his use of AI tools, which promise him to help him to do all of the many things that he needs as a writer and researcher, are making his scholarship worse rather than better? Let us look at the simple list of functions of a scholar. As a scholar, the nature and purpose of your research is to be driven by curiosity, passion, and purpose. That is not only to figure out something for yourself, but to give that knowledge, that finding, that discovery to the society to solve real world problems. That is not to generate a 120-page or 230-page long document and get a degree. The evidence that you find should be from actual investigation to find out reality, not a pattern of words that seem very plausible. The thought must be novel. I read a book, Rebooting AI, by Gary Marcus. It actually shows that AI has the massive ability, better than us, to do inductive and deductive reasoning. But then the best research starting from Newton to this day does not come from inductive or deductive logic. It comes from abductive reasoning. Pure, intuitive human guesswork. Seeing connections among dots in ways the machines so far are not able to do. And then there's intellectual integrity. Even if the machines become capable of inductive, deductive, and abductive reasoning, we need to show citations. We need to show trust. We need to be accountable to our peers and public. We need to show contextual sensitivity and cultural awareness. And finally, we are trying to become someone through our PhD. Not to do something, but to be someone. Someone who aims to advance knowledge, empower people, improve society, and create an identity. So when I talk to an undergraduate student who generated a research paper and give it to me, I need to be able to look in the eye and say, can you look in my eyes and say, you can talk about this topic without your AI? Can you talk to your granny about your topic on the phone without the text? Can you level with me? Because I tell my students, when you use AI, when I use AI, there is a tiny difference. You know what it is? I have read a few thousand more articles on that topic than you. There's a difference when I use AI and you use AI. I've read dozens of books on that topic than you. If you keep that in mind, you're going to use AI much more responsibly. So number two, to be brief, if we master the research skills, the data skills, the analytical skills, the computing skills, the fieldwork skills, the lab work skills, the specimen collection skills, the observation skills, if we develop all of these skills, then maybe we'll be able to deal with this increasingly agentive robot that can pretend to do everything for us. So one simple technique, now you might be thinking, what is this all lecture about? What are the actual skill sets? Even if you're taking a very simple skill set called prompt engineering, a lot of people just use one-shot prompting without input. Of course, input is dangerous, as Professor Bakr was saying earlier. But still, if you don't provide, and there's another conundrum, if you don't provide input, it is not going to think in ways that you need to. If you provide input, then it may take your data and train itself. In any case, if you don't give it context, if you don't give it a background, if you don't give it a role, right, then that response will be shallow. If you don't make it multi-shot, back and forth, if you don't say, what was your pattern of thought? Where did you find this source? Can you give me the link? Where is the full text? Anyway, I'm going to skip that. You may say that some of the dumber tasks can be given to AI like these. But what is dumb and what is not dumb, it's very difficult to determine. You may say these are relatively dumb, these are slightly smart, these are smarter, and these are the smartest things. And I should never give the last ones, and I can give the first ones. But even if you go to these actually dumb tasks, there is always an amount of risk. Right? Risk is very contextual. It is not universal. Somebody says, oh, you can let AI do the editing. Not really. Sometimes at the level of editing, you're trying to get the most fine-tuned idea in the way that you actually want. So when you ask an AI tool to edit, I don't believe that. There is no such thing as lower order thinking and higher order thinking. It depends on what the purpose was, context-wise. So if you look at all of these variables, there's no dumb task, really. You can say there are relatively dumb tasks given condition 1, 2, and 3. But if you take out the conditions and make a universal principle out of dumb task, there is no dumb task. If you focus on writing, there were, before AI, really bad ideas. I'm currently editing a book titled Bad Ideas About Writing and AI. There are 60 chapters from scholars around the United States. But we're building on a previous book called Bad Ideas About Writing. And now we're writing a book called Bad Ideas About Writing and AI. And according to some of the bad ideas, one, that writing is linear. You go in a one-way traffic, it's over. Not true. It's always recursive. 2, writing is transient. You finish learning and it's over. No, if that was the case, you would finish learning to write in 4th grade and you would never need to learn writing skills thereafter. That is not true. You continue to write new kinds of learning, new genres, new content, new purpose, new audience throughout your life. Transparency, that if you know the content, then you can sit down and write, anybody can write. Not true. You cannot never separate the dancer from the dance. writing from the content. The hierarchy myth, the order, right? Higher order, lower order. The content myth, that the form and content is different. Style myth, that good style is what you need. That is exactly why AI is fooling people. The genius myth, some people are born genius, not true. When we study writing in the field of writing studies, there are hundreds of books, thousands of articles, none of these are true. But these are common perceptions among the public, among university leaders, among graduate students, and among faculty across the disciplines. Now what happens when you bring AI into this? The bad ideas get on steroid. They go crazy. The linearity issue, AI will help you skip through some of the process. Or the transience issue, you don't need to learn at all. The transparency issues, AI does better writing than human beings can do. The hierarchy myth, it's okay to let it do the dumb tasks. The content myth, AI knows it all. You don't need to. Look how much worse they become. It's like taking a dog and turning it into a monster. Style myth, AI can write in any style. The genius myth, you just need prompting skills and anybody is an engineer or doctor. So, we are in this really, really, really dangerous landscape. Let me wrap up. Research and scholarship is not just one thing. If you look at it, it is so many things, right? And as I think Professor Babra was saying earlier, it involves, he said 11, I could make 50 as a writing teacher. But then what happens when we go to the AI tools? There are tools that will do all of these things. There are actually, for each of these functions, I found these many tools. And I've tested about half of them. So there's no lack of tools. There are actually custom designed now. Not only generate tools like ChatGPT, but specialized tools. But what about the ethics? What can graduate students do to take the responsibility? Let me wrap up with that third dimension. Someone who levels with other scholars in the discipline and society by earning and maintaining trust and credibility, and perhaps by also being recognized as a scholar in that field among the public. The question is, how can you use AI to engage others in your field beyond in a way that doesn't destroy your credibility? Here are a few of these common sense strategies. 1, unless AI systems fundamentally change and stop generating and stop claiming what they don't know and start telling us, I don't know this, I'm not the right tool, you need to actually consult the real world data. Unless they start doing that, we are not going to be good scholars by using plausible content. Second, it's about credibility. Credit. If you are earning credit for something that you didn't do, that is another problem with AI that we need to solve ethics-wise. Credibility. How are you going to gain credibility, be trusted? Where is AI undermining your credibility? Contribution. What are you contributing? And what portion of the contribution was AI's contribution? Craft. Have you developed the craft for a lifetime? Care. How much does your research and the transparency and the credibility show that you care about that topic? If you don't come off as a passionate researcher, then there is a gap. So, in order to overcome double standards, I mentioned do no harm, I mentioned accountability, I mentioned transparency. Let me stop with this visual. If you can ask the question, when you're using AI, do I have enough knowledge to judge this content? If the answer is yes, you can ask the second question. If the answer is no, please learn more about that topic. Otherwise, you're like the skinny guy and the fat man is plumping you and you're flying this guy. Second question, is this AI-generated response accurate? You're able to ask the second question only if you are qualified for the first. Third question depends on the second, fourth depends on the third, and so on and so forth. I'll be using this as part of our workshop in the next few days, and I will wrap up there. I think I made it in 40 minutes.